Well, hello, everybody. Here we are again. Hello, everyone. How are you? Do I do this a lot? Apparently. I like to do it as often as I can. I also like to appear live whenever I get a chance. How are you guys? Happy Thursday. It's been 9 days. We need to start kind of talking about where our head is at and where we're going there. Howdy, partner. I like that one a lot. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for tuning in last night for the Shoplift and Heal. I'm going to start calling this the Energy Report. I'll make myself a little banner thing so then you know which is which. The Shoplift and Heal, of course, is when I do a whole bunch of readings and connect people to their tarot, use a little astrology, definitely some mediumship. If you tuned in last night and you saw some of that magic, pass it along. Make sure other people know that as is going on. Crazy energy is happening for sure. By the way, news and notes, and I can't believe I didn't do this, but we got to deal with the new moon or the full moon tomorrow. That energy is just scrumdiddlyumptious, and without merit, we've got to start recognizing that the moon has a big part of what you're going to see here, and it traditionally does. It kind of gets the bad rap sometimes, or the over the top raps. As it sometimes is like everybody loves the moon. And that's fantastic. I'm not saying no, but on the other side of this, it's very much about recognizing that we've really kind of got to get ourselves in line here with the energies, right? The energies are definitely coming in hard, and the way that I'm seeing a lot of this kind of play out is that there are energies that need to really kind of come in. And right now you're probably feeling like, oh geez, Brandon, like no kidding. This is kind of what's going on. And I'm going to break down some of the stuff that's in the news. I mean, these appointments are horrible. I mean, absolutely none of them. By the way, say it with me, everybody. Donald Trump lied to everyone, even the people that supported him. And they are being treated to the same discrimination that he gives to everyone else. And he has reckless abandon for anyone's feelings, perspectives, or otherwise sanity. He has virtually no respect for anything or anyone. So why is any of this like a surprise? We're gonna talk a little bit about some of his choices here. Try and stick to the main ones. The ones that tick me off, of course, are the ones like, Tulsi Gabbard, who's, you're kidding, right? You're going to put her in charge of, negotiations around the world. Elise Stefanik, who, I mean, for all intents and purposes, has just been a loyalist. And that's kind of the consistent thing that you hear from, the people that are, kind of talking about this in terms of like, hey, what are you seeing? What do you feel? And then all of a sudden, hey, ACI ML M Life, ASIM Life, thank you so much for becoming a member. But you're seeing loyalist. That's really what you're seeing right now. You're seeing loyalist. And what does that mean? Well, there is without a doubt a connection with the idea that this isn't about making changes here. This isn't about, progressing. I mean, his first move was to get rid of this, the Department of Education. Okay. Why would you do that? Like, why would you do that if you weren't trying to replace it with some sort of other educational dynamic? Like brainwashing or whatever. Stephen Miller, look out for that placement there in the White House, part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That one should scare the crap out of everybody. The bigger problem that I think that I have with that is he's completely 100% like unabashed a white supremacist. Like he doesn't even hide it. And those are the ways that they're showing up, right? No, I haven't watched that, but you're the second person to send it to me. And I'm going to get to this here in a second. When it comes to, the astrology. And by the way, tomorrow, I'm going to bring it up here. That's what I was fiddling around with. Tomorrow, Penny and I had a little bit of a time change. We're going to be at noon. So those of you that are sitting at your desk on the Eastern Seaboard in the United States can tune in at 12 o'clock. And then it's 5 o'clock Central European time. And yeah, we're gonna bring this up right here. Just a little bit of a change. We're gonna talk about how, the full moon is in Taurus, and again, we've got to deal with some Uranus energy. I saw somebody else say this conjunct to your Uranus, which okay, and then Saturn goes direct. Saturn goes station and starts to move in a positive direction, or at least in the traditional direction. And Penny and I are going to really break down the astrology tomorrow. I don't want to jump the gun on this. I don't want to take any thunder from her and my conversation. But in a nutshell, we really are going to kind of tackle the types of things that are going to come up. I mean, when you see this positioning, this is the stuff that astrologers were like, holy Toledo. Windhorse, how are you? Hope to see you guys tomorrow as well. The just the Bible, nothing else. What does that mean? Oh, by the way, the Bible, I've seen a lot of people, quote that, be not afraid is in the Bible 65 times. And just to let you know, Antichrist appears 4 times. So, we got shit to do. There's, so tomorrow, make sure you tune in. You can see my channel, Penny's channel. Hey, Kate, how are you? Sorry I was so late with the emails this week. It is downright depressing. And how do we bring ourselves back from this? But it's depressing when you're literally looking at somebody that was about to be indicted for endangering the welfare of a child. Like on the surface, that's what it is. I'm not going to use the P word on my channel. But he was also Matt Gaetz, for lack of better terms, has been a wholesale election denialist. He's been a wholesale sycophant to Trump. He has been a wholesale, and the idea that he would put him in charge of the Attorney General's office. I have a friend of mine that works in. He actually works at what used to be the Chicago Tribune. Now he works in another news channel organization. I've been trying to get him on, the show forever and a day. He'll talk politics, but not astrology. So he's a hardliner. But he basically said, he goes, it was an audible gasp in the room when they saw Matt Gaetz's name connected to the Attorney General's office. And it wasn't even like they were just trying to, it's like their mind is made up. Right. And Kevin McCarthy, who really got, I mean, he's a tool, but he also really got the bad rap with all of those nomination elections, that sort of thing. Let's try and count it again. Let's renegotiate it. Let's whatever. And there's this whole dynamic, right? There's this whole dynamic where the value proposition leaves us when we start to realize that, like, we are no longer associated with it, right? Our whole dynamic. I'm going to go a little bit like this. So you get my go vote sign. I mean, of course he's flipping off America. Everything that he does is flipping off America. He doesn't love this country. There's no love. He doesn't love anything but himself. And even then, it's not even love. It's more of self-preservation, right? So you've got like Matt Gaetz, and listen, we can break down Matt Gaetz. I'll probably pull a video out when it comes time for him to meet his maker. But I will tell you, if you look at his chart, I can guarantee to you he's just got a ton of, he's dodging bullets. How old is Matt Gaetz? Let's just take a look at his micro, or his micro, you know what I'm talking about, his macro astrology. And by the way, for I'm going to say astrology, there's a couple of charts out there. That explains his kinky side. He's a Leo ascendant. Here he is. Donald Trump has a type. So his sun is in Taurus. His Leo is ascending. By the way, who else is Leo is ascending? J.D. Vance. Trump. J.D. Vance, and if you have a chance, go back and look at my Vance. First of all, Vance in Scottish means swamp. Just Lilith. Dude is definitely, and he's at 42 years old. So he's in midlife crisis mode. 42 years old is a midlife crisis because you're at your Jupiter nadir. So he's actually really disempowered right now, just in the terms of like macro astrology. We can get into his micro astrology here in the transits, but the biggest transit is that Jupiter is in opposition at 42. That is the reason why you have that, right? It's always the fixed signs. Yeah. Yeah. Have you noticed JD Vance has kind of gone under the radar? Of course you're Scottish. Yeah, it's funny, Cindy. I'm seeing a lot of people are going down that path of like pointing it out. And it's funny. This is a little known like story from early on in his political career. And when I say early on, I mean this is 2019. He came to King Trump, and basically, I talk Western astrology, Gene. Yeah, you asked that yesterday, and I'm like mundane. Oh, mundane. I appreciate Vedic, but I don't. I will pull out notes on that, but I'm not as versed in it. I will talk about. I do get focused in on house astrology, and it does change differently because of how they view the sun. The sun actually becomes the center of it instead of the earth, which is the way it is in Western astrology, which makes it imperfect. I realize that, but it's what I know. So, yeah, Matt Gaetz tried to absolutely shame Joe Scarborough, who was in his seat years earlier, and was like, oh, yeah, well, he murdered somebody. Well, as it turns out, the person, you got it, Gene, the person that passed away had a heart condition that was undiagnosed, and they didn't actually catch it in time. And she passed away. She hit her head. There was whatever. They actually have security cameras of her being completely alone. There wasn't anybody else in the office. She had even sent a text saying, hey, I'm just wrapping up here. I'm not feeling the best. I think I'm going home. Like there were a lot of things that were like consistent with somebody having an aneurysm, passing out, hitting their head and passing away. Like it was just there. But that wasn't good enough for Matt Gaetz because he had to have a file, and he actually wrote on the file, Joe Scarborough file on his murders. Well, Joe Burrows, and by the way, Joe Scarborough, who is on the Morning Joe show on one of the NBC channels, basically said, listen, you can say or do whatever it is you want. If this affects me in any way, shape, or form, I'm 100% coming after you. And the people that you happen to be sharing this with have already told me they would side with me. And then he kind of dropped it. But Trump heard what he needed to hear. It's not about actually having anything tested. Like nothing ever gets tested. That's kind of the drive-by. I get to say anything. I get to say things like borders are. I get to say things like they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. By the way, he never mentioned it again, did he? Not once. He didn't mention it. You know why? Because it wasn't about whether it was true or not. It was about whether or not he could get it into the psyche of it. Donald Trump uses the psyche over and over again. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, there are some things to like about Tulsi Gabbard. And at first I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going to listen to this. And then the brain started going, what was the deal with Tulsi? And at first I kept kind of going back and forth between she jumped ships from Dem to she flipped the seats by turning Republican and that sort of thing, which I think is kind of an unscrupulous thing. It's one thing if you want to say, hey, I no longer identify with this party, I'm going to switch to this party and rerun. That's not what she did. She ran wholeheartedly on the Democratic ticket in time, got elected, and then got into it. But that's not the weird shit about her. No. She is without a fraction of a doubt someone that is very subjected to extremism and cultism, right? And I actually think that Vance is kind of doing the duck and cover and being protected right now. So then all of this crazy stuff, right? Oh yeah, of course he's going to deport the Springfield Haitians but he never brought up the dogs and cats again, right? Yeah, and she was Kristen Sinema was definitely in that mix as well. But Colorado took care of that, right? And Tulsi and Gates are buddy. Well, she has a tradition of looking the other way when she was involved with nothing short of a cult for a long time. And this is something that when the Democratic Party came to her and said, listen, we're not going to elevate you anymore, because the more we dig up, the more we realize you're involved with a cult. And it is, it's directly related to religion, and I'm not piecing it together right this second, but she might have denounced it, or at least said, gotten her distance from it. The fact that she has followed a cult before in the past, though, is very significant here, because one of the track records of someone leaving a cult is that they feel susceptible to being another, right? I'm just going to pick apart all of these here. So RFK, I'm so torn about RFK, because some of the things that he comes out with in the platform is like, I'm okay with hearing it. I'm okay with questioning it. I did not buy the vaccines. And by the way, guys, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I just never got my vaccination. And I have no problem telling the story. I will tell you that it was 100% spiritually divine. The first time I went to go get it, I pushed it off. I said, well, I'm coming in front of, however many people, and I should probably get it. I was thinking about protecting others, and then I'm like, something's off on here. But okay, here we are. I had a lot of people kind of poking and prodding me, kind of telling me I really should do it. And after much debate, I'm like, okay, we're into the 5th generation of this. Like, I mean, I was far into the back end of this. And I went to go get it. And as I drove up, the car in front of me, this is when you had to pull up, just hang your arm out the window, because that's clean. And just, they jab you and go. And Science of Identity Foundation. Yes. Thank you. Authentically Misaligned. I love your name too, by the way. Did I tell you that one? Nice with Russia. Hundo Percento. Yeah, and I'm going to talk about them rushing out the first batch here, but the first batch of vaccines. So there was some like logical disrepresentation. Like, I want to believe in these vaccines, but my gut was telling me, hold off, dude. And like I said, I pull up, the car in front of me just pulls forward, and I'm like, oh, that was quick. And I pull up, and then they were like, sorry, we're all out. You'll have to reschedule. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I had cleared away 2 days, because they told me, you're going to get the shot flu and whatever. And doing this work, you have to have a level of physical embracement. Like, I've got to be in contact. I just can't sleepwalk through the day. I've got to be on my game, right? And Science of Identity Foundation, SIF. Thank you. Yeah. So what, oh, Ginny Thomas was involved with that. All right, I'll look that up. Thank you, Ro. And listen, I still go back to, if you feel like you needed to have the shot, take the shot. But here I am. I'm clearing out 2 days. They run out of it. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to switch to the Johnson & Johnson. I'm going to get the one shot. I know it's not as effective. I know it's not as developed, but I'm just going to take that, have the 65% chance, and then go off with it, right? This is the reason why we look up this stuff. Oh, yeah. Ginny Thomas is when she gets exposed, when history exposes her, it ain't gonna be nice. I think when history exposes Elon Musk, it's not going to be nice. We'll talk about him here in a second. But then when I got ready to go get the other shot, I had to go out towards Utica, which is about an hour and a half away. I am literally in my car driving past GE of all places, and on comes the news, and it basically says, and Johnson & Johnson has pulled their shots from the shelf. The first time it's a supply issue. The second time it's spirit telling you, don't get the shot B. Don't do it. And listen, I don't shame anybody that got it, that didn't get it, that says they didn't want to get it for whatever reasons. That's all water under the bridge. Everyone took it for their own purposes, their own reasons. Some people were forced. That was the part I didn't like. I do not like the abdication of free will. As soon as you start to say you have to do this, I'm out, dude. And by the way, completely tacky that, Cuomo Jr. was sitting there going, we're going to give away scholarships to people that get vaccinations. Really, nipple clamp? Like, seriously? Like, that's how you're going to get people to get the vaccine? I'm sorry, what? And your target audience is actually the strongest in society that doesn't actually need it and can recover the most? I just had a lot of problems with the vaccine, right? And by the way, then I do the timeline, and then I'm like, the normal vaccines take anywhere from 2 years to 36 months. Carry the one. This is in 20 months. Okay. 18 months, 16 months. Okay. That never added up either, by the way, guys. Just let you know. And I understand why people would take it. Like, we were put in a no-win situation. And by the way, that was part Trump administration, primarily Trump administration, and it did carry over in the Biden administration. And I didn't like the whole, like, shaming, like, just get your shot, or I got my shot, you didn't. It's very applicable when it comes to, did you vote? It's not so applicable into making your health choices. And by the way, this is one of those chisel points that they love to have in the narrative, that they can take away your HIPAA. Just to let you know. Right? Yeah, I drank. By the way, you like nipple clamp? By the way, if you don't know the nipple clamp, just write in nipple and Cuomo and just have fun. Have fun. NSFW. Just going to let you know. We call them nipple clamp around here. Anyway, so the other appointments, the one that, honestly, those two are somewhat laughable, different levels of laughable, because I do think that Tulsi has a level of competency. Matt Gaetz is sheer shit. I mean, it's just, there is no, when I say there is no, we got to finish talking about RFK here. There's nothing good about Matt Gaetz in that role. I mean, there just isn't. I mean, that's something where you look at the voters of Florida and you go, yeah. Oh, by the way, Elise Stefanik, do you know what she was most famous for before she started kissing Donald Trump's ass? She was campaigning for George Santos. Yeah, build a resume any way you can, I guess. There is the medical community that is downright frightened that if you eliminate vaccines, you will have polio and measles come back tenfold. I'm going to tell you that vaccines, we've come a long way as a society, as humanity. And that is one of those things that, like, I just don't see why you have to go back there. Now, if you want to call for the efficacy rate and have full disclosure on what's in it, I'm down. We should have some independent studies with that, because there are traces of mercury that don't really belong in vaccines. There are traces of mercury in your fillings. There are traces of, we really should review fluoride. And I know that fluoride is a big thing, but in the spiritual community, Everybody hears about the pineal gland. Everybody hears about the effects of fluoride. And here's the dirty truth. Fluoride became a thing in the 1920s because of one study done by one person who bought a shitload of fluoride. And basically what they did is they had to get rid of it. So they were able to sell it. They had to effectively get rid of it. They knew it was somewhat corrosive. By the way, in its form, in its powder form, it's corrosive. The only way that you do decrease the corrosiveness is to overhydrate it. In other words, heavily dilute it. So the way that you do that is you pour it into the the water system. Right. And you let it flow and you let it kind of drop down to a certain point where it's no longer toxic. Well, they decided to do this study, basically with this small faction of about 300 people, 400 people. It was not very large. And they basically went through and, talked about this Depression era town no longer having dentist visits. Like how they documented fluoride, its effectiveness was they basically went down this path of basically saying, yeah, so listen, we poured our fluoride into the water and then everybody just stopped going to the dentist. We don't ever recorded, dentists. So clearly we didn't have as many cavities. I'm sorry, what? Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have as many cavities. Oh, okay. What they are not recognizing, or what isn't recognized by that statement, is most of the dentists have left because they had suffered from a depression. And during that depression, all of the businesses left town, up to and including the professionals like the doctors and the what have you. And they would only kind of come into town at random and go visit the patients that they already knew. So they were no longer going to doctor's appointments. The doctors were dropping back into you. Into your house saying, hey, magical mermaid, you're one of my old patients. I'm in town today. Let me check your teeth. Now, there's no records of that because dentists were not actually considered medical professionals until the 1940s. Instead, they were just kind of like borderline hacks, like your chiropractor is, that are just kind of like, well, they do something effective, but I don't really know if we want to call it medical, because if your teeth fall out, they just fall out. They didn't put the 2 and 2 together that it actually led to things like heart disease, other forms of infection, and were high indicators of things like diabetes and other markers for cancer. So there we go, right? Yeah, I come in second place a lot. But fluoride came to be with a bullshit reason. So in the conversation with RFK, I am perfectly okay with the, can we go back and review this, right? Wholesale with that, we also have to take a look at who's making the money on this. I mean, let's be brutally honest here for a second. When, HIV patients needed to pay $900 a pill, and everybody just kind of went, well, why don't we, why don't we just, yeah. We're all looking at each other going, what the hell's going on? We truly need a kind of a comeuppance. So if nothing else, a modernization of it. Let's look at its effectiveness now. And you've got fluoride toothpaste covering the market, 4 out of 5 dentists, so forth and so on. Dr. RB, how are you? Good to see you. And it's, there's a, the vaccination piece of this. You can't convince me overnight that vaccines are bad. You also can't convince me that they're all good either, because I've read the autism reports and I've read effectiveness and I've read certain things about this that I go, there's some credibility to question this. I'm all about the question. I am not about the radicalness of it. You can't just take them off the platform and say, we're done. But when you've got somebody that's all of a sudden like, let me see what you did this quarter, that's not how medicine works. Medicine doesn't have a conference call with investors. By the way, one of the things that the United States can do a whole lot better, and I've said it 100 times, number one, get obsessed with a solution, not the problem, right? Let's get obsessed with finding solutions. Number two, The things that we grift on, the things that we get cash for, the things that we invest in, BlackRock, Vanguard, whatever, just look at your 401k. We are part of this too, suckered into it. Why not take those off the marking points for health? I'm sorry to say this. I know it's a huge boon. I know that the pharmaceutical industry just circled me and said, we make a lot of money from cancer stuff, and it's not just for our patients, it's for our investors. Well, as an investor, I don't want you to make money on this anymore. I want to give you money so then you can invest it. I want to fund your R&D department. And when you find a solution, great. But just because your scripts are being written 20,000 times a day, that's not what I want to make money on. That's not how I want a return on investment. I want a return on investment because you found a solution. See, we're roped into these things, and what we don't realize at first is we think we're taking care of our family. We think we're taking care of our future. And what you're really taking care of is a pyramid scheme of greed. And then next time you're at your doctor and they don't even look up from the screen and they're like, so you're on that, huh? What do you take that for? Cholesterol? Okay. What do you take that for? Oh, okay. Okay. You take that for what? Okay. All right. I'm going to re-up this vitamin D script. Oh, you don't need it? Well, I'm going to give it to you anyways, because I need to write a certain amount of scripts in a day. And you're like, but vitamin D, it's summer. I'm going to go outside. Yeah, you're going to need it afterwards. Will you just take it? How is that part of my plan? Right. Yeah. Dr. RB. I appreciate you for coming on tonight. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be refined. Oh, and by the way, when I had a chance to see my principal in my neighborhood flying a Trump flag, I said, how do you like that? Right out of the gate. No education department. Kind of fun, right? So in the scheme of things, medications have, our health care system is pretty freaking awesome. It's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional. But if you have an accident, you kind of know what's going to happen, right? You kind of know that, you kind of know you're going to go to a doctor. You kind of know your severity. You kind of know, that you're going to get specific things handed to you, right? If it's a minor thing and you're like, well, I just need to make sure. I mean, how many people have said, listen, I bumped my head and I just want to make sure. So you go through an MRI and they're like, there's no brain bleed. And you're like, thank you. Okay. But you were kind of hopeful and you were kind of thought it was going to be, and then you get sent home and then you have to do a, concussion protocol and whatever. And then you're still in the starting lineups on Sunday for the Giants. Sorry. That's my inside voice. But if you have like a nick or bruise, or you're like, yeah, I should have my doctor look at that. We've gotten good as a society to kind of walk through, like what we need, and becoming an advocate. I don't know how you guys are, but in the last 10 years, I've had to become an advocate for myself, right? The problem that I have with JFK Jr., RFK Jr., whatever the freak his name is that he has literally no experience except for conspiracy talk. That's a problem, guys. That's a huge, huge problem, right? And listen, if he has had a parasite, I'm all ears. I want to know about it. I want to make sure I don't get it. I want him to be the poster child. He's not in good health. You guys do know they're not. He's not in good health, right? Trump military. I'm trying to remember this guy's name. I want to be able to. So, listen, this is about fidelity. It's about loyalty to him. I'm trying to remember this guy's name, and it's not coming up here. The CIA director would be John Ratcliffe. I mean, I think he was already in that. Kristi Noem is the Secretary of Homeland Security. They're shooting the dogs. They're shooting the cats. Hegseth. That's the guy I'm looking for the Department of Defense. Let's have a brutal conversation about how woefully underqualified that dude is. And it's not just because he's an anchor on Fox and a weekend anchor at that. Correspondence, not even an anchor. Like the dude's fourth on the totem pole on a Saturday. Like there's got to be 2 vacations and an accident for him to get the prime seat, dude. Right? And yeah, I'm going to go over that too. I want to talk about how cryptocurrency is actually playing into this too. But when you have somebody that woefully underqualified, I mean, don't forget last week, one of the first things that the Joint Chiefs did is they got all the military leaders together and basically said, we have someone that is literally going from a danger, like a clear and present danger, to president. They've never had anything like this before. You know, the 98% of all people that are in the clear and present danger have 2 things on their file to close them: death and dismemberment. That's it. That's it. There's no third direction. They're either no longer on this earth or they're so incredibly impaired that they can't do it. There's maybe 2% of people that are able to kind of cut a deal somewhere, right? But even that's a rare thing. People don't realize how many deals aren't cut, right? So, to continue his treasonous ways, he decides to put somebody woefully inexperienced in charge, right? You know I told you guys that, thank you, doctor. I know that I mentioned, last week that I had this whole thing where I literally caught them stealing my credit card in real time. Like I'd opened it up and the thing popped up and it said $750 to Ticketmaster. So I call my bank and the bank says, well, you have to wait for it to go through. I caught them. I caught them red-handed. And they go, you got to let it go through. Now, there's a lot of like horrible analogies to that. Like you got to wait till they're done. It's like, what the Then I call Ticketmaster. I'm like, hey, Ticketmaster, this order that came through that's on my charge card, I did not make. You need to take this off like right now. Oh, no, we have to make sure it goes through first. How am I not supposed to think that everybody's on a grift here? Like we caught them red-handed. I did my job. I'm the one out $750. I'm the one sitting around going, what the hell? Right? And by the way, this isn't an ask for plea or money or any of that other stuff, but I have a message circle next week. And of course, now I have to find it and put it up here. I have a message circle next week. And if you go to tbrandonruss.com, I'm going to put that in here. I only have about 5 seats left. It is a closed caption. You guys get a Zoom link. You hang out with me next Thursday. And everybody gets read. We'll pull out astrology. We'll pull out cards. It's a lot of mediumship, though. It is primarily mediumship. And it's a lot of fun, right? So I asked myself, like, okay, so they just scammed you. You caught them red-handed, and then the company that you're trusting to keep your stuff safe basically said, let it happen. Who's getting paid? You can't help but think that this broken system is making somebody money, or they would fix it, right? On the other side of this, yeah, there is a tremendous amount of money that gets made on fraud. And it's the same as the reason why, and listen, all due respect to Veterans Day, why are our banks closed? Why are our banks closed? Why are our banks closed ever anymore? Like the traditional thing of like not being able to process things over the weekend. You buy something on a Saturday afternoon, it's out of your account immediately. You deposit money on Friday. For some reason, it doesn't show up till Monday, Tuesday. Why is that? Somebody's making money off of that. It sits in a deposit fund and makes the interest that goes to the bank instead of you. Hello? Let's just keep it broken because then we can make money on it. That is 100% there. Yeah, I could go off on fentanyl, and I will. That is the one thing that neither one of the candidates talked about at nausea. They mentioned it, but you want to know what the number one thing is in this country? It is drug abuse and deaths. Period. End of conversation. They're immigrants, whatever. The immigrants are bringing it in. Not really. They want to get through. They don't want to get arrested. They want freedom. They're not being drug mules. Does it happen? Sure does. It's human. Fentanyl is the number one problem because we don't know how to create expectations and make people feel valued. And this administration is going to make it worse. Just being truthful. But if you go over the resume of this highly qualified, and again, I'm not making fun of this per se, but for seems like I said something I shouldn't have. They froze me. But to allow yourself to not recognize what the major problems are is part of the problem. It was part of the problem that I had with the Harris campaign, to be honest with you. I'm like, hit it. People are like, oh, it's the economy. Oh, it's a whatever. No. If you look in the camera and you say your sons and daughters, your nieces and nephews, your grandchildren, your friends' kids, your whatever, are all being affected by the drug epidemic that is being led into this country because fentanyl is being laced, because what they're trying to do is drive a deeper addiction, or if it kills them, that's okay because you're replaceable. Everything about this administration is you're replaceable. Everything about the drug culture is you're replaceable. It is not about we want to cultivate. We want to have, the end plan for a drug dealer is not for you to be a longtime customer. It's for you to find other people that might want to get high too. Because if that's the only way they're ever going to keep going, or they have to recreate the wheel. This administration doesn't care if you stay or go. They can't wait for you to leave the country. Less headaches. And by the way, anybody that leaves the country in this time or whatever, they have no spine. I don't care who it is. I just don't care who it is. And don't give me anything about you have dual citizenship. Don't give me anything about whatever. You made your bed with this. You got to stick it out. It's interesting because he wrote a bestseller called "The War on Warriors: Behind the Betrayal and the Men Who Keep Us Free." So Hegseth's stance on a lot of this stuff, and again, it is an anti-woke thing. And by the way, what is woke aside from the protection of the people that don't have protection and being aware of it? That is it. And by the way, woke, long before it became a political term, was very much a spiritual term. It was about realizing that it was right in front of you and realizing your own biases, realizing that you yourself were a little racist. You yourself had a little bias into things. And you're like, wow, that just kind of woke me up. That was the framing of it. Then they take it and they shit shame it because that makes them feel better so they don't have to see the other side. Get it? So this Hegseth guy is all about making sure that women in the military basically stay back and just do bandages, right? He talks about how women on the front line is just kind of like this woke agenda has made us a weaker country. And this woke thing, Michelle, Godspeed. The problem in this country is drugs. It is not immigration. It is not the cost of fucking bread or milk or eggs. It is drugs. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody is talking about it. Nobody. Why? Oh, it's not really a big deal. You mean to tell me that immigrants eating pets is a bigger deal than fentanyl? That's where Harris should have been talking to. Sorry. Shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? But let's get to her getting up off the mat too. So Hegseth is definitely he's a bag of loyalty. He's a sycophant as well, unqualified. And I'm not knocking people that are in the reserves, But when you go from ROTC to 2 years of reserve to pay off your student loan, I'm just shaking my head. Like, that's the guy you're going to put in front of like 5-star generals and have him tell them what to do? He doesn't have respect in the room. He doesn't even have, you set him up for failure. But what else is new with Trump? He's setting people up for failure. You think Matt Gaetz is going to be a good AG? No, he's going to say to Trump, "What do you want me to do next, boss?" Instead of actually prosecuting things like, say, I don't know, espionage. Right? Hello, Cape Cod. We're happy to see you here. It's funny. I also think it's a little weird that cannabis is legal right now, to be honest with you. Because I've thought about that as the energy of things. And I mean, listen, I'm all for the judicious use of anything. Like, I'm not a teetotaler. Just because I'm a recovery coach. I became a recovery coach because I needed more tools in my toolkit. And I noticed that a lot of people that were trying to become light workers and do their work, whether it be Reiki or mediumship or whatever, they had this kind of undertone of addiction. And they might not have been an active addict. They might have been relying on alcohol, but not necessarily be dependent on alcohol. But I needed some other tools, right? So that's why I became a recovery coach. And one of the things that I started to realize was that when you start to work with people and pay attention to the things that they have to overcome, they actually are no longer worried whether they can do it or not, because they realize that their focus is, this is the reason why I'm not going. They have this big giant boulder tied to their leg trying to swim to the surface. And they think it's the surface fault. They're trying to bring the surface down so they can breathe. They're trying to work on their arm strokes to get up higher. Meanwhile, what they didn't do is untether themselves. That's why I became a recovery coach, because sometimes you need to learn how to let go of those things. And listen, if you want to blame it on the moon, burn shit in the new moon, you want to have sages, you want to do whatever. There's real challenges with this, right? When people come to their realizations, right? So we could pick apart the other things. Marco Rubio is a flat out neocon. He's already threatened Hamas. Like, he's not even nominated yet. And he's pulling little old women, Palestinian women, aside in the halls, who, by the way, were holding him accountable. And she asked the question. I highly, highly recommend you to find the whole clip, because Marco Rubio sat there and said, he was walking down the hall, and this woman asked, how do you plan to find peace in the Middle East with the Palestinians and Israel? I'm paraphrasing. And he turned and he goes, is that camera on? Because I want you to catch it. Hamas, they're animals. They're blah, blah, blah. Like, he basically demeaned the shit out of the people he's supposed to be negotiating with. They're clearly not interested in a two-state solution. They are clearly ready for Israel to finish the job. They are clearly ready for whatever. Now, listen, the Israeli people really got it handed to them. And when I say Israeli, I mean Jewish. And I have an empathy and a sympathy for them on a whole host of reasons. However, if you look at the conditioning in which the Palestinians needed to work and operate, they definitely use some skullduggery. You don't put your munitions underneath the hospitals, but it's war, right? It's war. You also cut them off at the knees by not allowing resources in and borders not being open, saying you can have your piece of land, but we're not going to talk to you. So instead of saying, guys, we got to come to a solution where you have these roads coming in and out. Well, we don't want people in there. Meanwhile, people can be in the, West Bank. People can be in the Gaza Strip. Like, it was insane how segregated this was. And therefore, you get to be on your holy land. But guess what? Holy shit. Right? He's already gaslighting it. I've seen that. I'm sorry, Trump for peace? This is the kind of stuff you have to point out to the people that voted for him. Like, seriously. And by the way, now you can say things like, hey, well, you have to have a war in order to get peace. That's not what you said. You said peace. the more people that Donald Trump ticks off, the better, I guess. But he is going to be so installed at the rate that we're going. However, let's talk about the turning of the tides. Anybody else get an email or a message from Kamala Harris here today? I'm sure a few of you have, where she talks about, hey, how about $250? Well, okay. I guess that's part of the game. But it specifically listed the things about fighting elections that have actually been won, but then also fighting elections that are still under suspect. I'm beginning to think Kamala Harris has been trying to work behind the scenes. I actually think that there have been some conversations. Now, the FBI raided, and by the way, how disgusting is this? That we could bet on the president of the United States. So enter Shane Copland, who owns this company called Polymarket. And he would easily be deemed one of the tech bros. Like if you're going to categorize him, you're going to call him tech bro. And he, along with some other betting platforms, and virtually every voting platform was taking the hedge bet of Kamala 51, Trump 49. Not him. And as a matter of fact, he wasn't so far off. He was off to the actual percentage that we ended up seeing on the official when it was officially called, which is what their byline is. Again, let's get over the disgustingness that you can actually bet on who's going to win. That just, what? I'm still having a hard time that sports gambling is on your phone. Like, do we need this? And listen, I've learned lessons through gambling, and being a 30-something-year-old and hanging out with the guys and going to casinos. That was a phase. That was a thing. Happy to have it. If I go into a casino now, I'm kind of like, this is stupid. Where's the buffet? Like, and I don't mind playing a little blackjack. I don't mind a little banter of the gambling. It's not about the grift. It's not about the bucks, right? But I always knew it was a losing proposition, even with my gifts. And by the way, if you haven't read my book, Funny You Should Say That, you should pick it up. Go to Amazon.com. You'll find it there. And by the way, I'm reevaluating my relationship with Amazon right now. I enjoy it. It's a comfortable thing, but I know that my rent on that seat is $100 an hour, and if I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. Where's the buffet? All right. So the dynamic that we're in the middle of, and part of the reason why, and I think it's funny that Pete Rose just passed away. And I was a strong advocate for Pete Rose going into the Hall of Fame and actually telling the truth. Pete Rose was asked to not participate in the game any longer because he was found to have gambled on the teams he was playing in an active season and broke the rules. However, the legacy of his hits will never be taken away, and he was an incredible player on the field. You could have very easily made that statement and honored that man, but instead they shit-shamed him. And literally, I will never forget this. There's a clip out there where they announced that, Charlie Hustle had passed away. And in the batch of commercials after they announced it was an advertisement for Sports Kings, for Caesar betting, whatever. Yeah, and listen, he was a tax dodger. All gamblers are tax dodgers. Like, I don't know if you know this or not, but that's part of the game, right? It's like, I was never in the Attorney Stone Casino. Let's go to the film. Oh, that does look like me, but that's not me. Well, they used your player card. What? Somebody stole my identity and used a mask? Is this your signature? Well, it looks pretty close. Wow, they got really good at being me. Listen, I don't get hung up on tax evasion. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pay your dollars and cents. By the way, the most patriotic thing you can do is actually pay your taxes. But here's the deal. We have lost ourselves at the grift. It's one thing to say, I can somehow procure resources and sell it to you for a profit and make a reasonable amount. I might even make a killing. I might even do so well that it'll introduce competition because other people will be like, you make money, I make money. That's called capitalism, everybody. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is cornering of markets and manipulation of numbers to a point where anybody that ever wants to be involved can only get involved. And by the way, how they reduce competition is they let you get in on the action. See also your stock portfolio. I'm sorry, guys. I'm telling you, it's going down. We're in a place where we can be part of a grift. They let us in on whatever level it is that they let us in on. Now, back on this guy that has Polymarket, he was so incredibly accurate. They were boasting it. They were talking about it where everybody, the entire other sports books were going in the other direction. By the way, all of these are offshore markets, but they can sell to us. You are making transactions in an offshore account, just to let you know. That sounds legal. Well, who is the lead investor of Polymarket? But a dude named Peter Thiel. And who's Peter Thiel? Well, he invested in a company called SpaceX. Where have I heard SpaceX before? Who's the guy? Who's the guy? Who's the SpaceX guy? Oh, yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. He has a car company too. He he's kind of like a tall, lanky guy. Dated Amber Heard for a while. Oh gosh, what's his name? Eleanor. Oh yeah, Elon fucking Musk. Excuse my French. This dude that got picked up is going to sit there and say it's the Biden administration saying we're going out. I have been looking this up, and it's not an easy piece of information to find. Hey, Janet, how are you? Elon Musk's Starlink company has a federal contract to work with certain states to upload their results. This sinks to high hell. You know, all of these gut feelings that we're getting, Elon Musk's company, Starlink, you know, the ones where we sat there and said, something doesn't feel right. This isn't matching exit polls. It's not matching preliminary polls leading up to it. It's not feeling. Yeah. Elon Musk, yes, I have, but I've got it over on my pay side. I'm going to release it. I'm going to re-release it. I'm going to go over it again because I want to look at it today. So I might use some clips of the old stuff. But anyways, whoever did this raid saw the link, right? Oh, yeah. And because this dipshit, and by the way, this is another one of those ego and pride things. They will fall because they boast about it. We've got a secret, don't we, Mike Johnson? We've got a secret. Don't we, buddy? Could that secret be wholesale treason? Right? Yeah, there's a manipulation of data here. You know, last time it was the Russians. And then they said, we're not going to let the... Oh, and by the way, there were 80 bomb threats. 80 bomb threats of polling places. There were no less than 15 complete disruptions of the voting booths. Like all of them just went down. Right? Oh, yeah. There's that too. Right? Peter Thiel also financed J.D. Vance. And he's the reason why, you know, Peter Thiel is the George Soros of the Republican Party. He's basically doing that. And by the way, I have no love lost to George Soros. Him and Hillary need to be made for each other, go off into the sunset, right? It's right in front of us, guys. And we scream it, and then they're going to look at you and go, you crazy. You're just a sore loser. Nope. I have 164 IQ, and I read dead people for a living. And I'm telling you, you're full of shit. Do you have, really? You know, they would get hung up on that to say, like, we need to see your Mensa card. Okay, come get it. They're bullies. They're bullies. Are uneducated. They don't bring value to anything, but they want to be important. Elon Musk loves humanity and hates humans. He wants to be everybody's savior. He thinks he's doing the right thing by manipulating this and making sure Trump got in. I'm here to tell you it's a firing squad. The level of treason that this is, they want us to get serious on this stuff with deportations and hardlining. We have to be hardline about this. And listen, pages of history should not be kind to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is part of the reason why we're in this spot. Right? Mike Pence did his job, and that man should be applauded. Liz Cheney did her job. She should be applauded. Merrick Garland was worried about the perception of things. They're all making sure that each other are getting pats on the back. They're making sure that everybody's getting paid. And here they are about, basically saying, meanwhile, somebody like Letitia James and Governor Hockley come out and basically say, come at me, bro. We stopped you before. We'll stop you again. Good for you. Or you're going to take a lease and another failed. You're going to take Lee Zeldin or Z Leldon. I don't know what his name is. 2 less Republicans in the state of New York. But it smells to high hell because it does. And listen, your friends are still gloating. I mean, they might not be your friends anymore, but your acquaintances are still gloating. And they don't have an answer for this. They don't have an. They're like, you're crazy. This is fraud. Meanwhile, they're sitting there talking about 2 volunteer election workers having a full-scale fait accompli with their mission to change all of these votes. Oh, and by the way, Giuliani emptied out his apartment when they came to seize it. Could somebody that is associated with Trump not be a complete piece of shit, please? Giuliani's lawyers quit today. They're legally bound to make sure that he's handed off to another person, but even they're saying, you're not doing anything we told you to do. Mitch McConnell has his hand in it. You got that one. I totally agree with you, Linda. Russian bomb threats to Democratic precincts in Georgia. We talked about that. There is a behind the scenes with the FBI and the DOJ. And listen, if I ever got a phone call on this one, all right, calm down, Cindy. Yeah, there were a lot of people that were kind of bringing in the idea that the FBI was kind of the last stand on this stuff, because the Department of Justice wasn't going to do anything to it. And listen, that's a lot of these things are disturbing, right? Yeah. How great is it? Listen, in all of this, can we at least laugh a little bit that the Onion bought InfoWars stuff? I mean, it's kind of like buying the Epstein plane a little bit. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. It's like, oh, and you guys do know that, like, Trump leased Epstein's plane, the same plane that used to take people down to Epstein Island. Oh, and by the way, Donald Trump was never on Epstein's plane. Never, not once. Because he had his own plane. Got it? Those aren't the logs you're looking for. I will tell you that I have firsthand account and knowledge that he was directly related to what Jeffrey Epstein did. 100%. Right? But here's the battle. Here's the energetic battle. You have to stand up for yourself somewhere. If they're able to put all of the pieces together quick enough, but one of the things about digital stuff is fingerprints. So you can see where it leads to, right? One line of code that needed to be changed, you got it, right? So how did he get away with the whole Epstein thing? Oh, and by the way, TikTok, people are talking about Michael Cohen and Jack Smith and Liz Cheney needing to kind of watch out for themselves. Joe Scarborough. Anybody related to the Epstein stuff. Ghislaine Maxwell's a dead woman walking, and she knows it. She knows it. They're coming for her maybe before the end of the year, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, but I am talking about them, Janet. And by the way, they'll never release the list. I mean, by the way, Bill Clinton's fingernails are all over everything Epstein, and nobody's even questioned him. Forget about the rest of the list. How about a former president that had his painting on the wall in a blue dress that announced to him that Bill Clinton, I own you. By the way, the other people that weren't on the wall, I own you too, but it's down in my vault. You know what that's going to be? You know what I need you to do? I need you to pass this bill. I need you to get the Queen to sign off on this. Bill is kind of like the innocent boy that just never grows up, right? And I don't think Bill Clinton. Listen, if you want to go Bill and Hillary on us, I will. By the way, Bill and Hillary are 100% part of the reason why this has come to be the way it is. Sorry, I said it. Bill just kind of was like, I kind of like women. I'm broken inside. I ain't doing my work myself, but is that a good cigar? And then Hillary saw every flaw that he had and drained him. Used his charisma to make it look like she was a good person. She's a cold-hearted bitch. If she's anything but the Queen of Swords in the deck, she's nothing, right? Yeah, you say that. She's a powerhouse, but she manipulated the shit out of that man. And there are some things that she did well. I'm not saying she was wholesale bad. But there's an underbelly here that made somebody like Trump look at this and be like, by the way, the Trumps and the Clintons, they were good friends for a long time, everybody. Oh, Natural Honey, good to meet you. And listen, there are attributes, there are positive attributes, right? Anytime I talk negatively about Donald Trump, I'm talking about his decision making and his moral compass. Now, I don't know what else makes up a person aside from those two things, but those are the two things that I choose to talk about, right? Jeffrey Epstein was absolutely an operative on some level, whether it be financiers or whether it be, other countries. He was an operative of some kind. Elon Musk looks a lot like that right now. He has international pull and no loyalty to anybody. He's about, innovating and creating and everything else. And with that stupid freaking dickhead hat on going, Nyang! He's looking like Giuliani's son at the World Series. Remember that one? Dad, I want Cheetos. Nothing wrong with Cheetos. And I know he had challenges, and I know I made fun of him, but my point being is, I know, I understand. But Elon Musk acting like a child without any filters at all, that's what I'm talking about. Why is he in charge of a suddenly created department with Vivek Swamy? I just got his name wrong. I'm terribly sorry. But what I'm really kind of getting at here is that these people don't have emotional boundaries. They don't feel anything around them. That's why I brought up Giuliani's kid. And they act in a way of overexcitement, and they always tip their hand, just like Trump always telegraphs what he's going to do next. I'm not shit-shaming autism. I'm shit-shaming people being in charge that don't have an emotional intelligence. That's the problem that we're having here. Yeah, thank you for the reminder, Robin. The Department of Government Efficiency, which also is a call to cryptocurrencies. That's the part I'm getting to. The US dollar was taken off of the gold and silver standard by Richard Nixon. It also was weakened with McKinley, which is a whole other conversation, who kind of got guilted into it. But and then, of course, Woodrow Wilson kind of created the Fed and all this other stuff. But there's, and the Fed is kind of a neutral positioned company that is not actually part of the government, but actually dictates how we make money. And we immediately go into debt every single time a dollar bill is generated because we have no way to overcome the debt that we've created when we create a dollar. Right? Cryptocurrency is a completely destabilized central function unto itself. And the only reason, like if you take a dollar out of your wallet right now, the only reason why that dollar is worth $1 is because you say it is and you believe it is. That's it. It's called fiat money. Cryptocurrency can be manipulated within seconds of its value because it is solely based on how much is bought and sold of itself. So it's kind of like the smart kids created a game to say, this is my own money. There was a guy in the NFL. He was a guard, I think, for the Titans, and he got a modest, check. He made like, $20 million. Like he was good. He was a good offensive lineman. He took $12 million and did nothing but buy Bitcoin in 2010. The dude is a billionaire today. And he even said, I don't even know what to do with this money. And, I know that we kind of shame the money people, right? That we say, oh, yeah, well, the millionaires and the billionaires and the whatever. We shouldn't have that many billionaires. We really shouldn't. Like, even in a stable economy, there should be a handful, right? And then you're like, oh, that's too much power. But if we create more billionaires, then that means that we're evening everything. No, what we're doing is we're whitewashing down the value of all of the other money down the road because the billionaires no longer hold the position of power, and then they have to gain it in other ways, like, say, influencing countries. Yeah. Oh, Diva. Yeah, I remember hearing that. Hillary said, yeah, why don't you run for president? And then he said, no, I'd probably run as a Republican. They're pretty stupid. Right? Yeah, and Janet brings up the question about the digital dollar. It does not matter. So now you have, where once upon a time you had sovereign nations that would have specific economic values to their dollar. And some of them would base, have you ever been to the Bahamas? The Bahamian dollar matches whatever the US dollar is. It's kind of lazy a little bit. Which, by the way, if you've ever been to the Bahamas, nobody gives a shit. But the Bahamian dollar actually mirrors it because it's the simplest inflection for them to be able to say we have value. What they're really saying is we don't have any value, but we have value to Americans that come here and spend it, or Europeans that understand the US dollar, right? So the US dollar is incredibly important in the world economic point of view because what's happening is, what would traditionally happen is that the dollar would be strong or not strong. right? And those things would be inflationary reasons. They would be things on strength against other countries. Maybe Canada's doing something better right now where it's shoring it up and maybe it's not leaking more money or whatever. Maybe it's investment onto itself is starting to pay off and their economy is stronger. It was an indicator on world economy. And even with that world economy, the one thing that I never understood whenever I would remember USA for Africa, remember We Are the World, remember how, we were like, wow, what a great thing. Lionel Richie and Billy Joel. This is great. Michael Jackson and Cyndi Lauper. By the way, you know why Madonna didn't participate in that? Because she couldn't have her own studio. By the way, Like a Virgin was released yesterday in 1994, 40 years ago. You're welcome. Go get your bracelets on. So We Are the World came out and they were like, we're going to raise they raised $10 million. $10 million. He won't pardon Diddy until he extorts everybody else on that list. Just to let you know. We are the world. And then let's get a little Bruce Springsteen. We are the children. We are the ones to say a brighter day. So let's start giving. That's my Kenny Loggins. You're welcome. Stop mathing. That song made $10 million. It didn't even put a dent. Didn't put a dent into the economy of Kenya. Or, it said USA for Africa. And I'm trying to remember. It was Kenya, Nigeria. Was it Nigeria? And yeah, it was Bruce and Loggins. Come on. Weren't you paying attention? I just did that. BBR 817. What are you, a stormtrooper? I love it. Oh, hello from New Mexico. And by the way, thank you for being on the website. I think you were the one. It was Ethiopia. Thank you. Thank you. Ethiopia, who, by the way, was ravished by drought, was ravished by civil war. It didn't make a dent. So, for funs and giggles, one of the classes that I took, I actually took a look as to why where did that $10 million go? And they did, oh, Bill, yes, thank you. Oh, good to see you. Yes, I owe some emails, by the way. So many hours in the day. I'm going to have to get to it later. And by the way, thank you guys for signing up for readings. I love meeting everybody. You guys are awesome souls, and I love hearing your story. I love connecting for you. I love giving you something about who you are and what you're about, and then seeing what you're doing with it. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, it's funny though. I kind of like calling you a stormtrooper though, like your Finn 927 or whatever it was. Anyway, so I really took a look at what happened to that money, and I started doing a deep dive. And Bob Geldof, who organized it, had a great song called "I Don't Like Mondays." And if you ever want to hear somebody else's version of it, go listen to Tori Amos. Her version of it is chilling. But Boomtown Rats really had one hit. They were kind of on the fringe of some things, got involved with some other people's girlfriends, and excesses involved, whatever. But on the flip side of that, what happened to that money is he literally was handing it off specifically for certain aids, for certain aid providers. And what he was finding was that it wasn't sustaining. Like, they weren't investing in themselves. They weren't building things. They weren't doing things like, hey, we have rice today. Why don't we build some farmland? Why don't we whatever? And of course, then the joke came in as in like, why don't you move them for $10 million? Oh, you mean like to the United States? Those would be immigrants. They have to go back. Do you see the thing where every single time we're trying to help somebody, it gets shamed in some way or another? But anyways, yeah, Quincy Jones wrote "We Are the World." Oh, there you go. Full circle. Rising up back on the streets. I see you. And then I really started to realize it's actually where the world actually gave me the perspective to start to realize that you don't invest. There was helping people short term and there was helping people long term. There was a difference between providing comfort and making it comfortable for them. Providing comfort for somebody on the side of the road in giving them $10, we judge the shit out of them, right? But how much are we willing to invest in ourselves to that person? I always have a 10 right there in my thing. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I know I'm ready with it. Right. And I'm not saying this because I want you to all hear those, what you think of what a great person, blah, 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 any of that crap. But I do want my boys to see it because I want to strike the conversation with them to talk about how they're just like us. We are one step away from one screw up that I might do that, or some margin call or some whatever that person might be in that spot because they're mentally not okay. And by the way, both of their parents had severe mental health issues. So I'm not going to be surprised if one of these days we pull up to a corner and either their mother or father are there. Everybody else gets a 10. They get to get in the car because we're not going to live like that. I'm not going to have my adopted kids see their biological parents on the side of the road. They're getting in the car. Move over, make room. Right? But the catalyst that happens is that when we hand them the money, I always ask this question, what do you think they're going to do with it? And by the way, let's just be cruel for 10 seconds because, we have that in this world. They're just going to drink it. Who knows? They're just going to do drugs with it. No offense. If I'm homeless, I'm getting a little fucked up. Not going to lie. Just going to be like, oh, this didn't go well. Right? I'm just happy I got it from a guy on the side of the road in some other scrupulous manner. Right? On the other side of that, what's the hope? Maybe that's the $10 that gets in the bowl of soup that gets them sitting down with somebody saying, I've always wanted to find somebody that could, I own a roofing company. I need somebody to work for me. Well, I am, but I'm not. I'm a little out of the game. And have that person say to him, hey, you know what? I'll pick you up tomorrow. Let's get on the job. Help me out for a day. And let's see what we can do. And maybe that's the turning point. That $10 gave that person hope and a full stomach. And it gave that other person an opportunity to become who they were meant to be for that person. Do you guys get how energy works yet? And by the way, I'm completely attached. This isn't me saying, and I gave $10 to a homeless man. Make a greatest hits out of it. No, shut up. What this really is and what we're really scared about is that those opportunities are being taken away. The opportunities of being kind to people you've never met, having an opportunity to meet people from around the world, or that they have the opportunity that my great grandfather had when he came over on a boat. We're actually trying to stand up for our lineage. We're trying to stand up for our ancestors when we stand up to these people. Unhomed. Yeah. I mean, listen, I appreciate the sentiments of, proper verbiage and pronouns and everything else. But I just want to say clearly, like, we're getting hung up on the problems, not the solutions. You know what's wrong with that person? They're a drug addict. You don't know. They're an alcoholic. No. You know what? They had their goldfish moment. They had their Jerry Maguire moment. They held up their goldfish and they said, who's coming with me? And nobody came with them. They severely miscalculated their entire life in one way or another. Or maybe they just can't see clearly. Or maybe they have to stop the voices in their head and they haven't figured out that they were angels and they were loved ones of the people passing by and they never had somebody show them how to master that. There's a lot of possibilities here. Or maybe they're nuts. Maybe they're crazy. Maybe they're cray-cray. I have a friend of mine who has a child with Down syndrome. And that birth was a choice. because the doctor said, I'm just going to give you the facts. And this is your choice. This is your life. This is your being. This is your responsibility. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you where the risks are. And it was a relatively, in relative terms, it was a lower risk thing for her to still come to term. But it wasn't about they couldn't determine the severity. They couldn't determine, functionality, high functioning, low functioning, all that stuff. And I remember, this is, 30 years ago. But technology was enough to know that there was a challenge, and her choices were enough that she could have never had to put up with them. And she chose to have her child. And I just caught up with her not too long ago. And I know that her son had passed away. He was, in relative terms, higher functioning, but not high functioning. He had an abscess. He had developed an abscess in his cerebral cortex. And that abscess became bigger, and it had nothing to do with him. Like, he could have been, a solid, 42, right? 21, 22. I'm off on my chromosomes today. But he gave her joy until he was about 6 years old when he was diagnosed with it. She's like, this kid's going to be okay. This kid's going to be okay. Like, and I remember seeing her at a mall, Crossgates Mall, busy as hell. And he had just started walking. He's 5.5. And he just started walking, but he was just this bright. It was like, like he had this going on. He could, he had a limited vocabulary. He had about 30 words. It was, he was still very much in the infantile piece of it, of, wanting more and, eat and what have you. But it was kind of his big day out, and he was down, and they were doing a little bit of a walk, and he could only walk so far. And that's when I saw her. And I'm like, how are you doing? And I know that she had gone through it, and we'd been closer, but after the birth, that was her life, and I get it. And she's like, this is the best thing ever. You never know what your value is until it's presented to you. You're actually full of shit until you're actually put on a choice. I used to say that all the time when I would gamble. Full circle conversation. And I remember having running into her. And then it went a while, and then I ran into her again, and we didn't really, I saw her a few times where we weren't able to really kind of get into it in a depth talk. And then I did run into her at a bookstore, and I'm going in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to, it was somebody's birthday. I had to getting him something. By the way, shop local. Barnes & Noble don't need your money, neither does Amazon. Cut all of your budget in half and make sure you spend it on local stuff. Local stuff. Got to start going the other way, guys. And I saw her, and I'm like, how are you? And she's looking at me, and she goes, I can't believe I'm seeing you today. And I'm like, okay. We were talking, and she was telling me about her relationships and how she's doing. By the way, I have a ton of opinions on the homeless, but they do have local authors. By the way, I was in Barnes & Noble when my book first came out, but they have limited engagement ones where you can only have them in there for so long, and I didn't close the window. I have to reintroduce it, blah, 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 whatever. But yes, Barnes & Noble, I shouldn't shame Barnes & Noble, but make sure that your money does stay local in some way. But we had a chance to talk, and we're sitting there, and we're getting a cup of coffee. Again, I'm trying to get in and out. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm like, if I don't find what I'm looking for, it's a gift card. And we're sitting there and we're talking, and of course it turns into a reading because that's who I am. And she, the day that I saw her was the day that he had passed. And she said, I have always sat in gratitude with him. And for some reason today when I woke up, I just missed him. She's like, I even when he passed, I was like, I still did the right thing. She was still looking back and going, I did the right thing. I made the right choices. I did the things that I needed to do. And when we were sitting there, I said, I don't know why I feel like I need to say this to you, but it's okay to start to move on. And I'm like, I'm not pushing you. I'm not telling you go make another one. And by the way, she had another daughter after him. She's busy raising her daughter. And she was in this turmoil with her then husband, who became again her husband. But her challenge wasn't that she missed watching him overcome the odds. And it was really kind of a selfish position when you think about it. But what she missed was watching him win everybody over. He wasn't supposed to walk, and here he is walking in the mall. Right? We take that stuff for granted, right? The idea that he was going to make it, in the longevity of somebody with Down syndrome is, 30, give or take. I don't know what the statistics are today. When I had a cousin with Down syndrome, she lived to 55, and that was a miracle. She wasn't supposed to make it to 12 because of her severities, right? These are the things that you want to... These are the reasons why you don't want a totalitarian state. And it sounds silly and it sounds self-serving, but you want the opportunity for somebody like that to be like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And by the way, as extreme as they are with saying you don't have a choice right now, they're going to get very extreme with saying, we're going to consider Down syndrome a medical condition, and I'm sorry, you have to terminate. Don't you think for a second that this is sheerly built on the God-fearing opinion of abortion and termination? This is about repopulating a religion, guys. 100%. Handmaid's Tale squared. Right? I'll be brief about this with homeless people. We don't recognize... How are we so goddamn star-spangled awesome that we can't solve homelessness? And you think that the border's the problem? One of the things that I love about Jimmy Carter is he picked up his hammer and nail. That man, I didn't agree with all of his politics. I was also 6. But I don't know that I necessarily would have done everything that he did. He had one of the biggest military blunders ever when they were trying to rescue the hostages. They were sending in helicopters in the sand, and that's why it was a disaster. You can't send helicopters into, 6 inches of soft desert. You can't take off. Gets up in the engine and you can't go. That's his big flaw. But the fact that he lived by example and rolled up his sleeves. Donald Trump is 78 years old. He just put on an apron and staged a fry order. He mocked every single person that ever worked hard. I used to sling bagels. I still have scars from burns. My feet are an absolute mess because they were soaked in water for years. Right? Right? Do you think Donald Trump would be able to survive a night in Central Park? Oh, stop. I see you authentically misaligned. See, but listen, and I'm going to use this as an example. Technically, you're being unhomed, right? Technically, things are. Yeah, good point, Janine. Got RFK keeping the streets of Central Park safe with his bear hunting skills. But here's the problem with homelessness is that we don't understand the conditions that make it. You have people where somebody left and it went from you get approved for a loan with 2 incomes, and then all of a sudden you have 1, and that 1 still has to feed everybody. And then you just, you make just enough to not qualify for anything, or you make just under where it is that would be acceptable for you to be able to afford it. You rob Peter to pay Paul just long enough until everything drains out and you're left with no other choices. She was talking about how those things are. And by the way, entitlement programs and all that other stuff, things like unemployment, things like HEAP, things like those other, subsistencies are incredibly important to keep you afloat during those times of like, hey, I'm just going without, right? Homelessness is caused by the 3 categories. Somebody duped them, mental health, and addiction. And by the way, domestic violence is the number 1 cause for homelessness. The drugs are the byproduct. And we don't address any of that, right? Instead, we have assholes that post things like, your body, my choice. What? On behalf of anybody that's grown up, shut up, Nick Fuentes. You don't even represent my species, let alone my walk of life. Yeah. And natural, honey, I see that comment. Being homeless after you get out of the, I have a cousin right now that's struggling with that as we speak. They were in the Air Force 12 years. They get out. They're looking around going, the job, the challenges that are there, they don't give a shit. There are 3 reasons why I don't like war. Number 1, I don't believe in why we're fighting them. Number 2, it is a completely disruption to the purpose on this earth. And number 3, and honestly, actually almost more important, we don't take care of our veterans here for jack shit. We suck at that. We suck at bereavement. We suck at Veterans Affairs. And by the way, the person that they named for Veterans Affairs basically said, maybe we should train our personnel to do more with less. You know what's a great exercise? Take your check. Take your taxes. Figure out what you pay in taxes per year. You come up with $1. Make your own budget with what you would want it spent on, and then compare it to what it actually gets spent on. Right? Gold Star families are shit on. They're just shit on. Listen, I'm a Navy brat. My dad, listen, I've got my own story. My dad 19 years and 9 months of service. Then he got the letter because they didn't want him to hit 20. True story. He would have got $1.25 more a month in his retirement. They honorably discharged him because we weren't in a time of war. That was the Bush administration, by the way. I remember my dad coming home. I was well on my own, married, all that stuff. But I remember my dad came home because he would do his 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. He'd go up to Fort Drum or wherever. And I remember him coming in. And I'm standing there talking to my mom. And they went through a time as well. They were unhomed for a little bit. They figured it out. And my dad said, they're probably going to call us up for Afghanistan. He said, are you sure you want to do that? And he goes, well, I'm Navy. He goes, I'm going to be resources. I'm going to be communication. I'm going to be grunt stuff. I'm going to whatever. My dad was in his 50s then. And he goes, yeah, something tells me, though, I'm not going to have to go. And I love that you guys are building a community out there. By the way, I don't know if you guys are on Facebook or not, but I'm going to pop this up. But he changed the subject. It's a little heavy on me. My dad figured it out. My parents figured it out. I don't give my mother enough credit sometimes. Love her to death. She drives me crazy. If you want, if you're on the Facebook platform, go join the Buzzing Bees. It's called the Spare Tree Bees. It's my work group, my user group, my family group out there. I love that you guys are becoming a community. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are finding each other. But yeah, I mean, here he is with that kind of honorable discharge. And, he had even said, he goes, well, everything for a reason, right? Everything for a reason. My dad's never really found a reason why the government turned their back on him. His group never went to active duty. They were called up during a storm a couple of times, but not, during a winter storm. And by the way, we're expecting like a foot of snow next week in central New York. That may or may not get to me, but I'm just upside of Albany, if you're following us on the map. But I'm through the lens of a kid that, my dad had a lot of pride. He was never a military person, but he had pride that he was, on the Nimitz. He was proud that he was his ship was patrolling the Mediterranean when the Bay of Tonka attack happened. His ship was the first one on site. They were the rescue ship. He's like, it was horrific. He goes, first time I saw a dead person. He ended up being stationed down in Florida somewhere. It's just not coming to me. He's told me 100 times. Oh, he's down at the Keys for sure. Right. And he's like, I just met the nicest people. I met guys that let me be guys. And, and I'm sure there was a little whatever with those guys. Navy in the 1960s. There may have been a girl or two, but he thought he was doing right. And the military actually provided him a way out of landlocked Minnesota. He wanted to get out of there. He was one of 9 kids. He was like, yeah, I'm not going to live this life. I got to go. right? And he it represented a way out and a way through. And then when he met my mom, he's in Rhode Island, and she's going to an all-girls school, and they're in Port. Wonder how that happened. And then all of a sudden, next thing he knows, he's involved with a family business. He's moving to upstate New York. He's starting a family and all of that, right? Oh, Black Bell, no kidding. Huh. I think he was on from 67. No, he was on from 65 to 70. No, 64 to 73. He did 9 years, right? Well, I was born in, he was based in Norfolk. Wow, yeah, my dad wasn't so much running as much as he was saying, he saw the life that he grew up in. And my grandfather was awesome, and my grandmother was tough. And 9 kids, it's a lot to take care of, and he was in a position where he might have been in charge of all the kids, right? Yeah, Black Belt, we should talk. I love this stuff. I was born in Portsmouth Hospital, right in the shadows of Norfolk. And by the way, yeah, I'll wrap up with this story. So I'm bringing the kids down to North Carolina. We're going there, family vacation, meeting cousins, all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm going over the bridge, under the bridge. You know the bridge. As soon as I say over the bridge and under the bridge, you know which bridge I'm talking about, right? So like I'm shooting out the other side, right? Right. And I go, I want to see where I was born. I want to see the OG. Yeah, Black Belt. It sounds very similar. My dad got out 6 months after I was born. The confounded bridge. Yeah, so there's this bridge that goes like this, and then it goes under. I think it's the Chesapeake. I could be wrong. My geography used to be much better. So I go there, and I go to pull up, not realizing that it is still a full military installation hospital. And I come waltzing up like as in like, hey, everybody, I'm back. It's Shecky Russ, everybody. What's your business? Like, hey, I'm here for the paperwork, buddy. True story. Bridge scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. I talk to dead people. I don't want to be one of them. And true story. They're like, I leave my family in the car and I go to walk up and these guys are just drawing firearms and it's hysterical. It's totally a Zeppelin reference. I know what I'm doing. And sure enough, like I go, listen, I was born in this hospital. And he goes, well, you don't want to die here, do you? And I'm like, all right, calm down, soldier. Calm down. And I just started laughing. I was just like, can I take a selfie of you, me, and the hospital? And he looks at his partner. He goes, you may not photograph me in any way, shape, or all right, calm down, Lieutenant Dan, relax. Oh my God. He's just like, wah, 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 wah. And listen, I respect soldiers on all level. It was never for me. Never for me. So I have a selfie. And by the way, I'm going to pull it out. I'll put it onto the Facebook group. Yeah, but it's me taking a picture. I mean, I've been driving for 12 hours. I look like a bag of assholes, but taking that selfie in front of the hospital, like, as in like, hey, time to come back. You guys miss me? I forget what the hell I said, but that being said, yeah, there's something disheartening about not being able to go back to see, and I'm sure it changes and whatever, but the fact that they were willing to shoot me because I wanted to see where I was born. Right. Yeah, this guy was just full. This guy was very much. I think this guy went on to report to Colonel Jessup at some point. Anyways, all right, guys. Thank you so much. Join me tomorrow, noon, Eastern Standard Time. If you haven't seen Penny and I banter yet, you haven't seen banter like you've seen Penny and I banter. She brings in the European perspective. She's British by birthright, and she lives in Malta, which is in the middle of the Mediterranean. And she has a pulse on what's going on in Europe. And I talk about the things that are here in the US. And we talk about the astrology in between. It is an interesting take on how we present it and how we talk about it. And for the love of God, she has to quit flirting with me. Oh my God, she's so terrible. We just have fun, guys. We're good friends for years, and I'm blessed to know her. She's a hell of an astrologer. If you can't get in with me, get in with her. If she vibes with you more differently, whatever, go get her. It's a cool thing. She's a really good reader. And my mom loves Malta. Authentically misaligned, you do know there's purpose in everything, right? Yeah, she got her cat back, everybody. You're welcome, by the way. Guess who told her where to find him? To the T. And by the way, when he escapes again, anyways, happens all day long. Sure does. All right, guys. Heart taps. Want to remind you guys to become the best version of yourself and remind one another to simply keep going. I know I surprised you tonight, but life's full of surprises and sometimes they're good ones. I'll see you guys soon. Keep going.